Hello and welcome to the second of the Advanced PanelPilotACE tutorial videos. In this video we'll be showing you how to utilize basic digital input-output, in this case in order to toggle pages. So assuming we're following on from last time where we created our basic layout, the next thing we'll need to do is to create a second screen. This can be done by right clicking on your screens button here and clicking add new. I'm going to rename this screen settings, since this is going to be the settings page. So for now, all we're going to put in here is a new border by copying in this background we created and setting the background color once again to black. And I'm also going to add the title. I'm going to rename this change the text to settings, since that's the title of this page. And next I want to ensure it's in the same position as the previous title, so 45 by 33. So I'll move that. Now that that's been relocated, I also need to copy across the time. So in this instance I'm going to select its visual element here, which is digital clock, as well as its digital display functional element, and I'm going to copy these and paste them into the new screen. I'm going to reselect its text element, which is digital clock. I've accidentally grabbed the wrong element, so I'm just going to get rid of that and just make sure I drag in the correct element this time, which is clock instead of digital display. And I'll paste that into this new screen here. Now the text element needed for that is the digital clock, and the format is already correct because we copy and pasted it. Next I'm just going to ensure again that that's in the correct position, which is 350 by 28. Now that these have both been added to the new screen, we're ready to carry on with our digital inputs and outputs. So the next thing we're going to do then is add the hardware elements. All we need for this part of the project is digital input output. So firstly I'm going to create the elements from one page, and then I'm going to copy and paste them across to the next page to make this process easier. So firstly we'll start on this page and drag in our digital input output, which I'm going to rename screen change input. Now you'll notice here that we have 8 different channels to select from. The first 4 are configured as inputs and the last 4 are configured as outputs. So if you ever wish to change this, if you select your project in the project browser, you can scroll down and then you can select input, output or unused for each of the 8 digital inputs and outputs. For this project we're going to leave it how it is, but you should bear this in mind with your project as it may come in handy. So now returning to the project, we've got our input digital input output. The next thing we're going to need is to add a hardware trigger. Now the hardware trigger will watch any hardware element, in this case our screen change input, and will trigger an action whenever that changes. So what we need to happen is, for when the hardware element is triggered, we need to check whether the input is high or low, and if it's high we're going to want to go to the meter screen, we're going to want to go to the settings screen, and if it's low we're going to want to go to the meter screen. So it's worth noting that this is a toggle switch, this isn't going to act as a push switch, so you'll be able to toggle between the two screens. So in order to check whether it's high or low, we're going to use a logic builder. Now this works very similarly to an if statement. So we create our rule. In this case we want to see if the property of our digital input, which is our screen change input, and its value property is the one we want to compare, is equal to the boolean value true. So this is going to check if screen change, let me just rename that, if screen change and we want the screen to change if this is true. So from this we can select an action to occur if this is true, and similarly an action to occur if this is false. It's worth noting that this has to be triggered by something. This isn't a continually occurring event, so this is going to be triggered by our hardware trigger. Next we need to create the action that's going to occur if the screen needs to change. For this we're going to use an action load screen. This is simple enough, and we'll call it load settings, and simply pick the page we want it to load, in this case the settings page. So if screen change dot input value equals true, we're going to load the settings page. If it's not true, then we want nothing to happen. So now that we've done that, we can set our hardware trigger to trigger the if statement that we've just generated. So we can quickly try that out by running the emulator, and you'll see that if we change the input to 1, we change to the other page. However, you'll also notice that we are unable to get off of this page. This is because our settings page doesn't have the functional or hardware elements required for the page change we've just implemented. As such, I'm going to copy them by selecting the hardware element, and then by also selecting the if element, the load element, and the hardware trigger element. And then I'm simply going to copy these and paste them into our settings page. You'll notice that the load settings is now red. That's because you need to reselect which screen you want to load, and in this case we want to load screen, not settings. So I'm going to rename this to load screen as well, just so that it makes sense. You'll also want to change the if statement, since we want the change to occur only if it's false now, not if it's true. So on false we want it to change back to screen, and if it's true we want nothing to occur. This could also be achieved by simply changing the element to action false element from action true element, and setting this to none. However, for this presentation we're going to use this rule change as opposed to changing these down here. As for the input, which we want to remain exactly the same. So now if we run this again in the emulator, you should see that by toggling these we can toggle which page we are on. And that's it for the second of the advanced PanelPilotACE tutorial videos. Thank you for listening.